Hey, what's up, guys? What's going on? Happy Friday. Happy Friday to everyone. If you're here, um, let me know if you guys can hear me. Drop a hello or hi in the chat. Um, yeah, hope you all are having a great Friday. Hope that you guys are ready for the weekend. I know I sure am. I just got off work a little bit ago. Wife left the house, so now I'm here and thought, hey, instead of actually doing a video about the topic that I wanted to talk about, why don't we do a live stream and hopefully some people drop by and yeah, we can chat and I can get to hear your guys' opinion, which would be great. So my Friday's been my Friday's been all right today. Hopefully you guys are having a good day as well. If you guys, like I said, if you guys can hear me, drop something in the chat. Just let me know. Also, if it's too loud, too quiet, let me know what's going on. Give me 1 second here to fix something. Let me see. Oh my god, my stomach's growling over here. It's Friday night and I haven't eaten anything yet, so. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. As people drop in, I guess they can just let me know if they can hear me or what's going on. If you need me to turn it up or if it's too quiet, let me know, and then that way I can kind of adjust as we go along. But yeah, so I guess I just wanted to welcome everybody and say, like I said, hopefully you guys are having a good Friday. It's been a good day for me so far. It's been busy, obviously, with work and stuff. I had work before this, and that was really busy. But good to finally be off now. Excited to get to spend some time talking about stuff that I actually like. So yeah, this I figured what we would talk about this video because I actually found this really interesting is Kenobi, the new Kenobi show, and cinematic language because that's something that's obviously very important when you first start out a show. When you start out making a show, when you start making a movie, one of the things they have to decide on, one of the things that is most important, probably as the director, you're talking with your cinematographer on this, is visual language. What's this movie going to look like? What's the camera work going to look like? What's your theory behind how you pick that stuff? Um, is it a show or a movie where the camera is going to feel pretty close and intimate with the characters? Um, is it a show or a movie where the camera's not, it's more impersonal? It's more of an observer, kind of at a distance. Um, there's obviously a lot of factors that go into it. Script is a big one. What does the script say? How are these characters written? What's the overall feel and the mood of the whole thing? Which can inform a lot. So breaking down a script is going to be an essential part of how you choose visual language. Um, and then, obviously, one of the most important things about choosing visual language is, has this been done before? Or not just done before, but like is this a universe that exists currently, that exists still, right? Are you coming in fresh to this without any sort of, so that would be like original content, something that has never been done before, even if it's within a particular style, but it's never been done before, it's never been filmed before. Um, that's really cool, right? Because you get to kind of start fresh. You kind of get to bring your own ideas. You get to collaborate with everybody, and then basically choose what you think would be right for your project, in collaboration with others, of course. Um, or in the case of what we're going to talk about tonight, because this actually is very interesting to me, is Star Wars, right? That's what I'm going to use it as an example, only because I've been watching that. I've been watching that now. I've been watching that recently as the episodes get released. So that's a very interesting topic to me, because I'm a big Star Wars fan. I love Star Wars, and one of the things that I notice is that it feels kind of different. It feels a little bit different than what we've gotten before. It actually feels different than the shows that we've gotten before as well. So within this era of like Disney Star Wars, it also feels different from, say, like The Mandalorian to what we're getting now with Kenobi, um, which is very interesting for me. So kind of seeing how it evolves and seeing how it goes, is pretty interesting. So that's what I want to talk about tonight, because I found that very interesting. As I was watching the show, I thought something feels different about this. Something feels, not necessarily good or bad. I think you can have your own interpretation of cinematic language and visual style. But how does that feed into what we do as creatives, right? So how do we pick a certain language? How do we pick a style? A lot of that is informed by sort of what you like and your sensibilities as the cinematographer, the director, kind of collaborating together. Um, a lot of that, like I already said before, depends on script, right? What is the mood of the script? What does the script say in terms of like how these characters are, what the mood is, that kind of stuff. So we'll talk about that. And I actually find that, like I said, I find this to be one of the most interesting topics because it can inform everything that we do creatively. Um, so I guess we'll just kind of start, going through some stuff, and we'll talk about, we'll sort of talk about, different styles and stuff, right? So I actually, give me 1 second. I'm gonna pull something up here. All right, so here's an example of one thing I'm talking about in terms of visual styles, right? Um, if we do, for example, a very simple Google search, right? Um, Let me show you guys here in a minute what I'm doing. Switch this over. All right, all right, here we go. So let's do this. We switched over so you can see my screen here now. All right, so I just did a simple Google search, kind of just to demonstrate a little bit of what I'm talking about in terms of like visual style, right? Cinematic style. And some of these things we can actually get just from an image. So if you look here, for example, I did this Google search real quick, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, right? It's a Western, um, kind of the typical Western that people think about, right? A lot of the times, or at least one of the most popular ones, has a very distinct style. Now, I don't have clips from the movie to play or anything, but even if you look just at a couple of stills of the movies, right, you have a very kind of common visual language in this, right, which actually shows up in a lot of westerns. So, you have images like this, right? The cowboy, he's got the hat on and the clothes. We're somewhere in a desert, right? Medium close up here, um, or a medium shot, right? And then if you look, for example, here's another one. Here's another screenshot, right? Kind of we can see the style of what's going on here, right? A lot of the times the cameras in these movies were very still. A lot of times they were more like very still, very simple movements, but kind of very deliberate. Focused a lot on a couple of things that made westerns very distinctive. One would be the face, right? We're all used to seeing screenshots like this from movies, right, where we're just close up on someone's face. We're getting a real close up, a focus on the gun, right? A lot of times when they pull the gun, and also there's actually a whole shot, a whole type of camera shot named after westerns, which is the western, right? Which is basically, there's none here that you can see. I guess this one kind of shows it. So you have the shot kind of coming a little bit below the person's waist. Just it's a little bit wider than a medium, where you would typically have kind of waist up. So something like this, right, where you can kind of see, and why did they do that? Like, why is that important to visual style? Well, if you look, they have something that's very distinctive to westerns, which is their guns, right? It's a lot of focus on the gun fighting, the pulling the pistol out, right? The kind of duels, and walking back to back, stepping away from each other, and then pulling the guns, right? So this is very distinct. It's a visual style, and it's very distinct to westerns. That's something that you can find in a lot of westerns. There was a string of movies that kind of set up the visual style for that type of movie, for that type of genre, and also things that got influenced by it borrow from this style. So if you look at something, since we're going to be talking about Star Wars tonight, we're talking about Star Wars, right? So if you look at, for example, let's see if I can pull it up. Opening shot of Mandalorian season 1. Right, so if we look, shots like this, right? Shots like this very heavily borrow from the Western visual style, right? It's influenced by Western, the Western genre. It's very much, you show the whole person, they're standing there, you can tell, their silhouette is very visible. It's centered around the action, right? In The Mandalorian as well, the camera, and I remember hearing Jon Favreau, I think, talk about it when, or some of the directors talking about it when they were talking about directing Mandalorian, and one of the principles that Jon Favreau had was the camera doesn't do anything that it couldn't normally do just on its own, right? So if you look at the way that George Lucas shot the original 6 movies that he did, the camera did very simple work. Now, we're talking about camera work that originated in the 70s. George Lucas was also influenced by a very particular style of movies. You have the Kurosawa films, you have westerns, you have things like the Flash Gordon series and all that kind of stuff that influenced him. And you can see how that carried into Star Wars when he made it. So The Mandalorian was very heavily influenced by that and kind of took his philosophy into The Mandalorian. So if you watch season 1 especially, and also season 2, you get a lot of very simple camera moves. The camera is usually on sticks or tripod, and also you have some like crane shots where the camera is either coming down slowly on a crane, and that's usually kind of as an establishing shot. So usually you'll see that, especially when people are walking into a place, so you can kind of see the whole landscape and see what's going on. And sort of that introduces you to your character. So as the camera sort of comes down, usually the characters are walking into frame and kind of walking into wherever they're going. You'll see that a lot in The Mandalorian. You'll also see, like I said, the Western shots are very common, especially for Mandalorian, who's kind of a gunslinger type character, and very simple camera moves. So you have, for example, when action is happening, when something happens within the frame, you don't really get a lot of movement, right? You don't get Mando sort of like, or the camera sort of like hectically following along. With Mando, you get very simple camera moves. It's usually a stationary camera that's very intentional. It's following the main character or the action that's going on in the scene. And then you get usually like reverse camera angles back and forth for dialogue scenes. So it's pretty simple, and that all follows a visual language that was established by Lucas. If you look at the original movies, for example, you'll see that a lot of, even when there's a lot of action going on, typically the camera doesn't do much, right? It's very intentional. It's there to capture the frame. It's to show you what's going on. It's almost like a silent observer, right? It's almost like the camera was dropped into this world to sort of let you observe what's going on. And yeah, it's to kind of it's kind of dropped in there to let you see what's going on. You kind of get a glimpse into the world, but the camera isn't the main focus. So the camera sort of just fades into the background, and you're almost watching frames of a world that exists, that you're kind of peering into. So it's a very like almost like kind of documentary style camera, if you want to call it that. Very simple camera moves. If you look at even the original trilogy, talking about like A New Hope or Empire Strikes Back, a lot of those camera moves when they're having dialogue scenes are very simple. A lot of the times, the most complicated thing you'll actually get is sort of a dolly move, right? A dolly move where the dolly with the camera sort of moves in, or comes in on a shot, sort of pushes in, or backs away. That's sort of the most complexity that you get. And like I said, you get crane shots. And then obviously the camera moves that are all in space are a little bit more complex than that. Like if you get, you know, a spaceship battle or something like that, then the camera does typically tend to move pretty erratically. But that was because, or not erratically, but it sort of more complex camera moves. And that's because you either have motion control cameras back for the original trilogy, or the new trilogy, for example, it's either miniatures or CG, so the camera can get a lot more complex with it. And not necessarily that that's a bad thing. Like, for example, I'm thinking the opening scene in Revenge of the Sith was amazing, and it followed Anakin and Obi-Wan starfighters as they're kind of coming down, and, you know, it's like peering over that ship, and then you kind of jump into the battle with them. A lot of, like, influenced by a lot of, like, World War II dogfighting type stuff, which they carried into all the movies as well when they're doing the aerial combat stuff. So anyway, but why are we talking about this? Well, it's very important to realize where you come from and where you're going, and realize that, for example, Star Wars has a very distinct visual language. It has a very distinct visual language that was established a while ago with the original movies. And you know, now as the series or the universe hasn't been like rebooted or anything, right? This is a continuation of the story that George started to tell, and we're now moving forward into a new era with the Disney stuff that's coming out, especially on Disney Plus with all the series. And then we had 7, 8, and 9 that were made by different directors. You have sort of the introduction of a new visual language, and whether that's good or bad is very subjective. You can, you know, give your opinion on it if you want. I'm not necessarily here to talk about that. I'm sort of here to talk about what it means and how it comes across, right? Because that's the most important thing to me. Especially like as me trying to be, you know, wanting to be a director. I'm wanting to direct my own stuff, writing my own stuff. And that, you know, filters into how I see editing, how I see color grading and all that. It also affects how I do that as well, because it's one singular vision coming to the screen, right? And a lot of directors are obviously that way as well. When they're filming something, they collaborate, they discuss with their director of photography, and then they kind of work to make one vision, you know, that collaborative vision come to life. And the editing and the color grading and everything else fits into that vision as well. So for me, visual language is one of the most important things, cinematic language. And like I said, that's stuff like, how does the camera move? What kind of movement is the camera allowed to do in terms of like when you're coming into a universe, you have to be respectful of that. How do we simultaneously move the craft forward and bring in potentially new stuff? Versus, you know, versus like changing it too much to the point where it's unrecognizable, which is one of the things that I wanted to talk about. because it sort of happened for me during the Kenobi show a little bit. And I sort of wanted to just put it out there and kind of see what everybody feels like. And hopefully I'll have made my point enough that you guys kind of see what I'm talking about. So with that, let me see here. Oh, let's see. We got a hey in chat. Hey, Stitching and Stripes, how are you doing? Saying hello. And yeah, let's see. I'm gonna here. You know what? Let's do this. Let's go and let me bring up some stuff here so we can take a look at kind of what's going on, right? And I'll sort of show you what I mean here with what's going on. So let me bring up. I'm actually going to compare it to Revenge of the Sith. That's one of the movies that I want to look at only because I think that's a very good comparison for Kenobi, since we're looking at we're looking at the same type of fight scenes, choreography, or at least that's the direction that they said it was going in. So I think that's a good place to start, would be Revenge of the Sith, because that's the last time we saw these characters. And I sort of want to compare that to what's going on in the Kenobi series when we meet these characters again. And like I said, so the point being, we want to look at visual language, right? We want to look at what's going on with the visual language. We want to look at, has it changed? Has it not changed? Does it feel familiar? Does it feel, does it feel like we're sort of still in the same universe? So let me pull it up real quick so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Give me 1 second here. All right, just trying to get everything up here real quick. All right. So, here we go. Now, let's look at Revenge of the Sith first, because we can kind of see what the original and what the original creator did, right? This is George Lucas directing under his vision, and we can kind of take a look at so let's take a look at what's going on here in the George Lucas version. And this is, like I said, this is Revenge of the Sith here, right? So this is episode 3, and if we take, let me switch the screen here real quick. All right, so here we go. We got Revenge of the Sith, right? This is the beginning of the fight with Anakin and Obi-Wan, right? So basically, what's they're about to do, they talk a little bit here. I turned the volume off as well, because we don't really need like the music and the dialogue and stuff. And also, this is probably going to get copyright stricken anyway, or at least attempted. So we can do without the music and stuff as well. So if we look at what's going on here, Obi-Wan and Anakin are about to talk, and then obviously the fight starts. But it's not so much taking a look at that. Let's take a look at the actual camera, right? Let's take a look at the camera work and what it's doing. And obviously take a look at the visual style. So here we got a planet just right off the bat. We got a planet that's pretty dark. The only thing it's being illuminated by really is the fire and the lava beneath. And then we got, sort of these lights here. but everything else is still pretty dark. We got this platform that's sort of illuminated by these lights here on the ground that you can see. Even Anakin here is sort of in the dark, but still pretty well lit. You can see all the textures, you can see everything. Obviously, his face is a little bit in the dark here, but the rest of him you can kind of see. He's very well outlined. He stands out from the background. So let me actually switch it just to the screen so you guys can see. Let's do this here. So, all right, let me start playing it here, and then you guys can kind of look with me, right? So, here we go. We got, turns on the lightsaber. He jumps. Now, in that little bit, we don't, still, not that much going on with the camera. We have some fast editing. So, we have this shot here, right? Then we have this shot. So, you have two people in the shot, still well lit, very well illuminated. You can kind of see what's going on. And then Obi-Wan in the background here, also well lit. You can see everything that's going on. And then he's about to jump. But look at what the camera does, because this camera angle is still pretty still, right? And then you get this jump, right? Now, this is just an overhead shot. We're kind of just watching two people here, and we get the overhead shot so we can watch him jump. And then he lands, and we sort of get this cut into them fighting. But once again, the camera's not really doing much. If you look, the camera is very intentional, sort of following them, right? We're following a fight, and then what you're going to notice is you're going to notice like a succession of quick cuts in between their two angles. So you're gonna see like Obi-Wan's vantage point, and then you're gonna see Anakin's vantage point, and them fighting, right? So here's Anakin. You can see Obi-Wan. There's him over the shoulder, Anakin over the shoulder, and then them two again, right? But all of this is very simple. And what do I mean by that? The camera's still, right? Most of the time. It's not, there's no like intense shaky cam. There's nothing going on here. There's no, everything's really well lit. You can see what's going on. You can see them two. They're very well lit. You can see their facial expressions. And if you notice, now this is just one example, but if you notice, this actually carries on through pretty much, I would say, all of the movies. So I think all of the movies sort of have this same visual style. This is just a good example of it because it is an erratic fight scene between the same two characters that we're going to meet later on in Kenobi. But all the principles are still here, right? Simple camera work, cutting back and forth between a few different angles. But for the most part, the camera is sort of like this still observer. It's very purposeful. It's following the action, but there's nothing crazy going on. So if we keep playing this, right, we're still here. Very simple camera angles so we can see the choreography, right? It's very intentional, right? Then we get, you know, this scene with Darth Sidious and Yoda, but I'm going to skip over this because that's not the interesting part. We're going to keep going forward, right, to the fight scene still continuing between Anakin and Obi-Wan. So here, right, you can see the camera sort of like dolling a little bit on the wide shot, right, and sort of pulling out. Here we got the hallway scene, still very much purposeful still camera, probably following on a gimbal or whatever, so we can kind of track with them. And then they end up in the control room over there, right? So let's see that again, right? You can see it's pushing in through this hallway, and then we're going to see them in the room fighting, right? Still very well lit, still very visible. You can see everything that's going on. The background, and I mean, this is part of the visual language as well, if you look, but if you look, this background is selling what's happening with the action, right? You get, for example, you get, you know, if you look here, you have the people, right? The actors. Then you have all of this stuff happening in the foreground. So you can see the holograms, you can see the big computer screens, you can see everything, right? All the dials and stuff, which goes a long way to sell the environment. So you're basically getting, you know, you're in Star Wars, you're oriented, right? They just came into a new room. So here's your wide establishing shot, basically looking at these two characters. They're going to continue fighting, and once again, it's going to continue cutting between the two of them, so you're going to get the two angles. And And you can kind of see, as we're watching this, you can sort of see what I mean by establishing a visual language. The camera is very simple. It's an observer to let you see what's going on. The camera moves are very simple. In editing, we've made it a little bit more complex by cutting between different angles pretty fast, but that's because it's a really hectic fight. So you have a very intense fight between two performers that are really good. If you've ever watched the behind the scenes of this, they practice this to death. So you're getting, actors that really know what they're doing. You're getting multiple takes to kind of follow them along throughout the fight. That's probably been storyboarded or prevised or whatever. And yeah, but the camera is still very simple. We're just, most of the time, actually, I would say the camera's probably just on sticks on a tripod, and we're just slowly following the action. Every once in a while, you'll get sort of a tracking shot like down the hallway. That's either done with a dolly or a steady cam, right? Following behind the actors to kind of get them fighting and going down the hallway. And then you get, the other side of it, which is, probably steady cam again or dolly. But the camera is making very small, deliberate moves to follow both of the characters and both of their perspectives as they're going through this fight. Every once in a while, you'll get wides like this. Let's pause it here and then move forward a little bit. Find some other frames that I like here. All right, so here we go. Right, they're continuing to fight. Now, even here, we got Anakin choking out Obi-Wan, and they're going to continue fighting, right, doing stuff. And look at the camera. Very still, following them the whole time, right? Even here, very simple. We're cutting back and forth between the angles so we can see what's going on, but it's very simple, right? Even here, we cut out to a wide so we can kind of watch the action, back to a medium, right? But you can see everything that's going on. The camera's very simple. And then we got the two of them hitting the lightsaber. We kind of hold on that moment for a while. All right. So I think anyway, you guys get the point. So we've, looking at this, you can see what's going on. You can see what I'm talking about visual language. Even it carries through the rest of the film. Even the fight with Sidious and Yoda, it's very deliberate. The camera movement is very specific. And the it's you can see everything that's going on. It's lit in a particular style. It's very well lit. You can tell what everything's going on, all that in the action. So let's go over to Kenobi though, and tell me if you notice a difference. Right? Tell me if you notice a difference in the visual language, right? The visual style of what's going on. So, here we go. We got, if you guys haven't watched this, by the way, spoilers for Kenobi episode 3. Just letting everybody know now that there's spoilers. We're going to talk about it. We're going to watch the episode if you haven't seen it yet. So, all right. 3, 2, 1. Spoilers. I already got that out of the way. Okay. So here we're on episode 3, right? Part 3 of the new Kenobi series. And what you'll see, I think, is a sort of mix between two different visual styles interplaying off each other. And we'll talk about it after. We'll talk about what my opinion is. Not necessarily whether it's good or bad or whatever, but just the feel of it and sort of what it evokes, right? So here we go. We got Vader walking into this town. One of the things immediately that I notice is that this is like a pretty dark setting. We got a lot of stuff in shadow, right? But we got one thing which I think is sort of carries through from the original, from the Lucas movies, is camera's pretty still, right? Pretty still in following the actions. The camera is pretty deliberate on what it's doing. So if we take a look, he's choking this person out. He just arrived in the village. Kenobi's watching him through this door. Same thing here. We got, pushes this little kid down or whatever, kills him. Same thing here. Now, if you look, and I know this is supposed to be kind of a bleak moment or whatever, but if you look actually at what's going on, even here, right, with the Inquisitors, and kind of here too, I don't know about you guys. I'm sort of losing a little bit of the detail and stuff of what's happening here with Vader. Now, obviously, he's a menacing figure, right? He's walking out. And then look at the stormtroopers are actually pretty well lit in the background. This, to me, Still sort of evokes that feeling though, and looks like Star Wars. You got a lot of the set that's lit behind. You got the set that's lit here. Vader's a little bit in the dark, but that's okay. He's a menacing figure. He just showed up. You can kind of see his silhouette. The town is pretty well lit, though. You can see all the little flashing buttons on Vader's suit on the door. It's all greebled out. If you guys don't know what that means, go look up what greeble means. It's a Star Wars term that they use behind the set in productions. And if you kind of look here, we got a well-lit environment. It's nighttime, clearly, so it's dark, but you can still see what's going on. So, the camera, pretty simple. It's following these characters, cutting back and forth between the different ones. But pretty simple. We got a little bit more wobble, though, right? We're starting to see that it's got a little bit more of a wobble than kind of the original trilogy had. I don't think... there was very few times that I can remember, even off the top of my head, where the camera was shaking in the Lucas version, right, of Star Wars episodes 1 through 6. And I think that was intentional, right? I think a lot of the times the camera, for Lucas anyway, as far as what I can tell from visual style and looking at those movies, is that the camera wasn't supposed to be noticeable, right? We don't want the camera to be in your face at all. So, looking at this, we got a little bit more shake, so that's a little bit different. Not necessarily good or bad. I'm just saying it's different, right? But still feels pretty Star Wars-ish. So if we continue here, Vader's still in the village. Still, it's pretty dark, but you can kind of tell what's going on. The town sort of looks convincing to me. It's Star Wars-ish, right? Even here, right, you got the silhouette, you got the close-up, you can kind of see this, you got the droid, right? Everything is like, you can see all the buttons, the glows, everything looks very Star Wars-ish. You got droid parts in the back. So, all right, you can kind of see what's going on here. Now, let's look at they fight, right? So, Darth Vader eventually catches up with Kenobi. And then you got a fight that happens between the two of them. So here he is, sort of walking in the quarry, right? Because he's like in a mining planet. So he's walking in the background here. He's trying to get away from Vader, so he's running away. And if you look, I think this is where a shift sort of starts to happen, where you can kind of it's sort of shifting away from the original sort of intent or look of it, right? So let's look here. All right, so here we go. We got shaky cam happening. That's not necessarily captured on the day. That might have been added in post. I can't tell. Now, all right, so here is one of the first things. To me, this is obviously pretty dark. Now, I know it's because it's nighttime, but it's pretty dark. They're in a place that has very minimal to no lighting. So already we're sort of getting a different visual feel, at least to me anyway. And then as he's running away, Vader's here. He pulled out his lightsaber already. And before that, actually, if you look, is it here? No. So it was before. If you look at what's going on, Kenobi's running away. Like I said, he's in the quarry. And then you'll see it. I'm looking for where he ignites his lightsaber because you can kind of see it. See what I'm talking about. Oh, here's Vader again. He lights his lightsaber. That's not what I'm looking for. All right, here we go. So I'll stop on this frame right here just so we can kind of look at it for a second. So here we got Kenobi, right? Everything else is sort of pretty black, pretty dark around him. And he's lit just by his lightsaber blade, right? So that's the only thing that we can see here that's lighting him. Because now there's a change in the technology, right? So now if you don't know, even including in the 7, 8, and 9, the latest movies that they made and everything after with lightsabers, they've managed to miniaturize the technology and they can put it all in the hilt of these lightsabers that they're creating with the electronics and stuff. And now they have the blade that actually illuminates. In episodes 1 through 6, that was done in post. So and what they fought with was basically like a metal rod, either with reflective stuff wrapped around it, or it was either green or red, right? So they could mask it out or roto it out in post. So now you have a blade, like the actual blade of the lightsaber, that has LEDs in it and it lights up. So the actor can actually get those reflections, that light on their face and sort of spilling into the environment. Um, like I said, so that's different than we've ever had. So right away, I mean, this language of Star Wars is sort of evolving, right? We never had that before. If you watch the Obi-Wan and the Anakin fight, as close as it gets to their face, when they're swinging the lightsabers around, typically you don't have any of that light. You don't have the blue light. You don't have the spill. So automatically different. Like I said, we're not looking at good or bad here. We're just saying different, right? So this to me is very different. So we're looking at a frame that's majority in shadow. We're looking at a pretty black frame. We have the background here, which you can't really see much. You know they're in a quarry. Not much to see in the background, obviously, because there's not much there, right? There's just, these heaps of rock or whatever. And then you have Kenobi, right? Which is the only person in frame, and they're lit by their lightsaber, so you can see it, right? Interesting, right? Interesting, at least to me, because we haven't really seen a lot of this visual style in Star Wars. A lot of it was, based on George Lucas's vision. Most of the stuff, even that we saw like in Revenge of the Sith, even in dark places, the characters, the scene, everything is pretty well lit so that you can see everything that's going on. The backgrounds are really diverse and have a lot of character to them. Even like the night scenes in Coruscant, if you remember and you go watch in Revenge of the Sith and in, I think, Attack of the Clones, you can see everything in the room, right? You can see most of the stuff in the room. You can tell it's nighttime, but it's well lit to where you can see the texture of the clothes that the characters are wearing. You can see the room, right? Like the walls and stuff, even though some of it may be a little bit in shadow, but you can see what's going on. You can see the characters. You can see their facial expressions. I actually went back to look at it, and I think you can see like Anakin's, if we go back, I'm not exactly sure where it is, but if we go back, he has some scenes with Padme where he's sitting in the room, but essentially you can see, like even here, look, for example, this is a very dark scene, right? We're looking at Revenge of the Sith. This is a very dark scene, but you can see, based on the sun coming through, this and shining on the ground, you can see everything, including the texture of their robes. You can see the hair. You can see sort of everything here. And it's very well lit. It's very well lit to the point where even if it's dark and the room is dark, you can tell that there's a bench here. You can tell that there's something on this side, right? You can see the blinds kind of shining in and the robes and even the chairs that they're sitting on, the texture, the room. You sort of get a feel for all of it. If I actually let this play through a little bit, I think they'll have some close-up shots, which you can still tell is very well lit. Yep. See, look, here we're getting the light sort of just barely coming in on Yoda from the blinds and sort of shining across the face. But even the part of the face that's in shadow, you can still see texture and everything, which is nice because I think that in a world like this where it's science fiction, fantasy, whatever you want to call it, still very cool that you can see what's going on in the frame and you can see everything that was intended to world build, right? The part of the set. Even here on Anakin's face, you can tell that this is in shadow, but it's still lit enough that you can tell, right? Even the texture on the robes and stuff, you can still tell what's there. I can see the creases in everything. I can see the robes that he's wearing, which obviously is a very stark difference from this, right? You can kind of see a little bit, but even here, we start at the bottom of the frame, we kind of start to lose all that. Obviously, we've lost the background at this point. So yeah, anyway. And then the one thing that you can tell is different is the camera, right? If we look at the camera here, he's about to confront, Vader's about to meet him again. We're getting a lot of shaky cam, right? We're getting a lot of back and forth with the shaky cam. Here's an over the shoulder shot. once again, we're lit pretty dark here to the point where we're losing most of the frame besides just the lightsaber in the face, right? But so here comes Vader. Actually, and Vader too. So the light here is sort of kind of spilling, and Vader's pretty much in shadow as well. So Vader almost to the point where you kind of can't tell because he's not really backlit either. So he's not 100% standing out from the frame. He's sort of coming out of the darkness, which I understand. And then here in the background, I can't really tell what's going on. It's pretty pitch black back here as well. So if you look, and then he's going to ignite his lightsaber, and then they're going to have a fight, which actually the fight really is what I want to get to and look at as well. Same thing here. Like, this to me seems pretty dark. If you look, here is, the background. We've kind of lost most of it. You can see the buttons on Darth Vader, and obviously you can sort of see his silhouette a little bit, but we're sort of getting to the point where I've lost most of the features. I've lost most of what's going on here in his armor and so on and so forth. His face, you can kind of, if you strain a little bit, see the eyes sort of poking out. But yeah, anyway, so they're going to fight. I think they exchange a couple of words, and then I think they fight, which is really what I want to get to. Anyway, back here, though, once again, we get to the town. I'm sort of back to being able to see everything here. We have a village. We can see these people on the ground. We can see the LEDs and the everything kind of shining off stuff. We got the lights on either side of the door here. We can the doors are very Star Wars. The stormtroopers are, this one's lit and sort of standing out from the background. You can tell that they're roughing up village, the people that live in the village, right? And you've gone back to a style of camera that, even though it is sort of moving a little bit, but it's more intentional. Like, you can tell that everything's sort of framed once again in sort of that George Lucas style where we're an observer looking into this world of what's going on, right? We have stormtroopers walking in the background. We have this robot here sort of coming to walk out. The buildings and stuff, which sells the world, right? The world building, you can tell they're like, oh, this is like kind of a mining colony, village outpost. A lot of like almost what looks like temporary buildings, almost like they could be torn down, but they have stuff and pipes coming out of them on the outside. Looks like Star Wars. So let's get to the fight, though. I think it's about here. So they start fighting. Now I'm going to let it play through just so we can kind of look at what's going on, right? So once again, we're focused on Kenobi. We're pretty much in the dark again. And a lot of back and forth shaky cam. Oh, and here's the action, right? We have a couple of swings. We got a wide shot here where we can see the two of them sort of battling. And then we're back here. The camera feels a lot more erratic. We got a lot of sort of back and forth rocking and camera shake, right? And also we got these two characters still pretty much in the dark, basically just illuminated by the lightsabers, right? So let's choose a frame here that we can sort of look at for a minute. I think they pretty much go at it here. And then let's pause it right here. So here we can tell again, so besides the camera movement, which is different, right, than what we've looked at before, you can also look here, right? Kenobi's pretty much in dark, almost completely, right? We've sort of lost most of the, at least for me anyway, for my eyes, we've lost most of the texture. We've kind of lost what's going on around here. Once again, the background's sort of falling to shadow. And then we got Kenobi that's illuminated by his blue lightsaber blade here. We can kind of see it on his arm and his face. And Vader, which is being illuminated by the red lightsaber and sort of the flashes that are coming off the lightsaber. And we can see the suit, but once again, it's sort of fading into shadow, right? To the point where I'm sort of losing features. I'm losing this part. And once again, the background as well. I'm sort of losing that. The only thing I'm seeing is sort of like, mountains of rock, basically. That's pretty much it. So as we continue this fight scene, and once again, the shakiness and stuff of the camera, right? You can kind of see here as he's walking, it's kind of wobbling, right? So, all right. So anyway, even here, I think there's a lot of camera movement as far as I can tell from what I remember, right? Yep. We sort of, it's almost like the camera's sort of kind of going like this, right? And it's an intense fight. I wouldn't say more intense than what's happening in Revenge of the Sith anyway that we just looked, but anyway. So regardless though, you can kind of tell the camera's doing something a little bit different, right? So anyway, my point being, if you look at the difference between these two things, you can kind of see the difference between the camera work, you can see the difference between the visual styles, and what does that do, right, for what does that do for what we're looking at? Well, what that does basically is we're talking about two, if we look at the two and kind of compare them, we can see that there's something a little bit different, right? There's something a little bit different between what we see in Revenge of the Sith, and there's something a little bit different between what we see with Kenobi. I'm not here whether to say that's good or bad or whatever, but like I said, it's different, right? So that visual language, that visual style is sort of carrying over into these new shows, but we're sort of moving into a different direction as well. So I'll give you my feelings about it. Essentially, watching Kenobi, everything about it felt pretty good. Everything about it felt pretty Star Wars, pretty, right on, up until we get to this fight. And I think the reason why that happened is because we have a change in the visual language. We have a change in what happens with the camera, what happens with the style of filming, what happens with the environments. And it's sort of starting to shift away from what we originally knew from episodes, 1 through 6, which in a universe like this that was established by one person that had the original vision, the visionary that wrote and filmed this initially, established a visual language for the films. And we kind of know that Star Wars is Star Wars based on what we see on the screen. And the visual language is a big part of that. This last part of Kenobi here sort of moved away from that. So we're getting, a lot more camera movement. It looks very erratic. Whereas if you remember, the fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin in Revenge of the Sith was very still, right? The camera was very still, at least. We don't have a lot of camera work going on. It sort of fades into the background, and the camera almost becomes secondary to the action that's happening on the screen. You still have a lot of cuts. You still have, it feels fast-paced. It feels action-y. It feels good. But the camera is an observer. The camera is letting you observe what's happening, and you're getting the perspective from both sides, but we're sort of getting that still camera work. And not to mention, too, everything is also lit very differently. It's lit differently to the point where you can see everything that's going on, even if we have an area that's either pretty dark or in the dark, which allows a little bit of world building to happen, right? Your eyes can kind of look around the frame and see what's happening in the background, right? Whether that's the skyscrapers of Coruscant, or whether that's what's happening in Padme's apartment when they meet and it's nighttime, right? So it kind of allows you to look at all of that and go, I know what's going on. I can see the environment. I can see Star Wars, right? This to me is moving in a direction where we're sort of shifting the visual language. And like I said, it doesn't matter to me whether that's good or bad. I think people have their different opinions, and art is subjective. So if, some people might think this is good, some people might understand why, because we're getting that hectic movement. It's an intense fight between the two of them. But to me, I think the most important thing that changed is the visual language. We're getting a lot of the shot in shadow. We're getting a lot of camera shake to the point where it's not necessarily like disorienting, but it's a little bit of like, oh my God, what's going on? Like this frame isn't sitting still, so you can see everything. So anyway, I think that's pretty important. I think that's one of the things that obviously as a new director coming in, is one of the things that you want to work to, see like how much of this are we going to preserve? How much of the original are we going to preserve? How much of something new are we going to bring into it, right? And depending on where you fall on that spectrum, you either like it or you don't, right? So, but to me, it's different enough that I can notice a change, right? And that's sort of where you get into a little bit of a gray area where you're saying, is this enough like the original and we're doing something new? For example, like I said, like in The Mandalorian, it's very similar. It's a lot of simple camera moves. It's a lot of holding the frame still so we can see what's going on, even if the action is fast paced and cutting back and forth. Um, or are we going to introduce new stuff into it, sort of like this, where we have a lot of camera shake, we have a lot of almost like you don't know what's a little bit disorienting. You don't know what's going on. Where are we looking at? There's a lot of we're in the dark. We just see kind of the lightsaber swinging around with just the light coming off those. Um, does it? And then at that point, you need to ask yourself a question like when you see it, does that feel like Star Wars? Is this in the same visual language in the same vein of Star Wars that we've seen before, or is it starting to feel different? Is it starting to feel a lot different? And sort of those are the kind of things that obviously you need to think about, because when you're making something like this, um, you're making it in a style that you're making a franchise that people recognize, that's very recognizable. You're making a franchise that there's a lot of people invested in this stuff, this content, right? So yeah. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. I kind of wanted to come on here and share that stuff with you guys, and just sort of bring it up to you and let you kind of see and watch and tell me what you think. But yeah. Anyways, I think I'll probably just leave it at that. It's been fun. I mean, we've been going for just a little bit over an hour here. And yeah, so, you know, write down in the comments below, what are your thoughts? What do you guys enjoy about cinematic language? What, tell me what films you guys like, the kind of stuff that you guys watch. If you're a fan of Star Wars and you like Star Wars, tell me what your feelings were on the latest episode of Kenobi, and sort of that shift in visual language, in cinematic language, Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, if you guys haven't done that yet. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you've watched this live stream or if you were here live with me, actually, let's check. I think we had some people stop by. But yeah, let's see. Oh yeah, there we go. We had Baited Ox stop by. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. It says I loved your DaVinci Resolve videos. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm always happy to be here and live streaming with you guys. If you like this format, if you like this content, sort of longer form, just giving you my thoughts on stuff, let me know. I mean, write in the comments down below. Let me know if you like this style of video. I'm still going to keep doing my regular uploads as well, talking all about filmmaking stuff. But covering something like this is a little bit exciting sometimes. You get to cover a different type of topic. And I think live streaming is a good format to do that in. Where you can kind of get on like this and just ramble and go and talk about stuff. So yeah, anyway, listen, I hope you guys have an amazing Friday night, whatever you're doing. I hope that you guys are going into a great weekend, that you have fun this weekend. Yeah. I've loved hanging out with you guys. If you catch this stream on the replay, let me know down below. Don't forget to subscribe. And have a great weekend, guys. Appreciate it.